Assalamualaikum students. I hope all of you are well by the grace of Almighty Allah. I am also well by His grace. Students, in the previous sessions of our science class, we have discussed about light topic, and in this chapter there was the topic of refraction and so many practical incidents related to it, refraction and its laws. These topics were discussed in our previous classes. Today we are going to discuss a new thing related to light, but before starting our session, I want to show all of you a device which was used in the ancient period of time during 1990s and at that decade when we were at childhood. Let's see which device is in my hand, and this device is this one. This one is a camera. I think you are thinking, why does this camera look like this? This camera is looking like this because it is an analog camera, and nowadays which we use, this is digital camera. Today we are going to find the similarities of this analog camera to our eyes. To know or to find out the similarities, we have to know the structure of this camera at first, and we have also to know how does this camera work. Students, I want to show the camera very closely to all of you. What are you seeing? This is a part of camera. These are the part of camera. These are the part of camera, and the backward is like this, and the inside portion is like this. In this inside portion of this camera, there is a section. In this section, we used to put films. At the time, there was film which was in roll shape, and at the time we were bound to take only 32 photos using one film. But nowadays in digital camera there is no limitation to take photos, but at the time we have to take only 32 photos using one reel of film. By the way, let's move on for our topic. Let's see which I have drawn on the whiteboard for all of you. Students, there is a figure which is drawn and on the whiteboard, and this figure is the internal structure of an analog camera. Actually, that type of camera which I have shown to all of you a few seconds ago. There, the parts of this camera are in the front part of this camera. There is a round glass screen, and after that we will find a lens situated in the front of this camera. And if we go backwards from this lens, there was a path which allows the light to get inserted in the inside portion of the camera, and this path is known as aperture. And after aperture, there is a whole like thing which is covered with generally covered with a cover. If we remove the cover, the shutter becomes open, and if we put out the cover, the shutter becomes closed. When we have to take photos, we have to open the shutter, and for opening the shutter, we have to remove the cover from the shutter, and thus this shutter allows to pass the lights inside the camera through this shutter. After shutter, there is a film which I have shown to all of you. The film in this film section, this film is situated. When the light goes like this, actually this one is a thing which is situated in the front of this camera. We are going to take the picture of this QP object. Actually, this QP object is our object which is going to give us an image of itself. Actually, QP, suppose QP is a person who is standing in front of the camera. Q is the head, and the P is the foot. From head and foot, all the light rays gets inserted through this lens, and through this lens the light rays get inserted through this aperture. After aperture, the light gets allowed by shutter when it is open, and after passing from the shutter, this light rays creates image on this film, and the image is totally opposite position from the object. The object was in position QP and the image was in position PQ. That means head becomes foot and foot becomes head in the film. Actually, the film makes image which is actually in opposite direction of the object. So thus this camera works. This analog camera works when the shutter is open and the ground glass is removed. The light rays passes through the lens, and from the lens goes to the aperture, and from aperture to the open shutter, and after shutter it creates image on film. Actually, the film is situated in a photographic plate. Thus, image is created. Actually, the photographic plate contain so many silvers. When the light rays falls on this silver, the portion which contains which gets light becomes hard. That portion silver becomes too much hard, and the portions of the photographic plate which don't contain light rays, the silver of that portions does not become hard. When we remove the photographic plate and we dip this photographic plate in sodium thiosulfate or hypo solution, the hard portion of silver remains, and the light portion of the silver becomes melted, and thus we get negative from the film. And after dipping into sodium thiosulfate again, we will find the positive version of image. Thus, following this process, an image was a color picture or a colored image was created in the ancient period of time. Students, I want this was the internal structure about analog camera, and I want to show all of you some similarities with our eyes with this portions of that camera. Actually, if we compare this camera with our eyes, we will find that the eyelid, when we blink our eyes, the eyelid helps to pass the lights through cornea. When the eyelid is closed, we are not able to see anything, because at the time the light rays are not allowed to pass through the cornea. That's why eyelid is compared to the shutter of a camera. Our eyelid of eye is compared to the shutter of an analog camera. Again, the aperture of the camera. This was the aperture of the camera. This aperture of the camera was compared to the cornea of our eye. Why? Because this aperture allows to pass the light rays inside the film. Actually inside the camera, and like aperture of the camera, cornea also allows us to see anything, because through cornea the light ray passes into the lens and from lens to the retina. So aperture is compared to cornea, and in the last portion, photographic plate is compared to retina, because we find that in analog camera, the image is created on this photographic plate or film. And in our eyes, retina is the portion which helps to create image on its wall. That's why photographic plate of analog camera is compared to the retina of our human eye. Students, that's all for today. We have discussed about the internal structure of analog camera and similarities of camera's parts with our parts of human eye. So I think that's all for today. Students, you will complete your worksheet obviously sincerely and you will read out your books each and every line very sincerely, and I'm going to end up our today's session right now. Allah Hafiz.